like this whole rapid elimination of fossil fuels is based on terrible thinking. The world needs more fossil fuels, and the way to achieve it is not by favoring fossil fuels or preferring fossil fuels, but just by having energy freedom. So every form of energy gets to compete. Producers get to choose what to produce, consumers get to decide what to consume, and we have reasonable laws against pollution. I think if we have that kind of world, we'll have a lot more energy, and we'll quickly innovate in terms of alternatives to fossil fuels, particularly nuclear, which I think has a lot of potential, but right now it's criminalized, and I think we need to decriminalize it. So we are here to discuss that with them and hopefully get some of them to turn around and maybe carry an I Love Fossil Fuels sign.
That's an odd thing to hold a climate march.
Well, actually, fossil fuels make us a lot safer from the climate.
How?
Well, so in the last 80 years, we have 50 times fewer climate-related deaths since people can actually deal with heat and cold and all sorts of other climate-related problems.
Okay, climate-related as in heat and cold, problems like that.
Storms, everything from floods. We're safer from all of those things because we have modern civilization, and half the world doesn't have that. We're still looking for the scientists. We thought we had a lead, but right now it's like Bigfoot. But I mean, so there are about 3 billion people in the world with almost no electricity. In the last couple decades, by using coal and oil and gas, people have gotten a lot more electricity. So I would like to see that continue. But this rally is saying that should be reversed.
Well, I don't think that's true.
Well, they want to ban 80% of coal use.
Right. And
nobody seems to be teaching. So we're going to see if we can learn something even over all of the cacophony. All right, so you guys, you don't need to do that. But I really do believe this stuff, and when I would see these rallies, I would get really upset because I'd really think these guys think they're saving the world, and I actually think they're destroying the world. Achievement. And so kind of one question I get is like, why do you think this? This is such an unusual thing. And kind of the usual guess that people have is, oh, you must have been groomed by the fossil fuel industry or something. Like they found you at a young age and paid you a bunch of money, and then you started carrying this sign. So I didn't even know anyone in the industry when I came up with all my ideas, let alone have any financial relationship. I don't have a background, like a geographic background near the industry. I grew up in a place called Chevy Chase, Maryland, which is DC area, which is not very pro-fossil fuel. And my family has nothing to do with fossil fuels. I also have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein, in case anyone is wondering. My last name's Epstein. So the thing that about my background that really shaped my view on energy is that when I was 20, I decided something very controversial, which I was in computer science at the time at Duke. And I told my advisor, I'm never programming again because I want to become a philosopher. And he was super unimpressed because he said, well, like, why would you become a philosopher? Nobody ever has a problem and says, let's call a philosopher for the solution. But my view is actually philosophy is the most practical subject. And my view actually on energy and climate is that 90% of the disagreement is philosophical and not factual. And I think actually once you think of it in a very logical, philosophical way, it's very hard to disagree with the case for more fossil fuel use. But people say, yeah, it has nothing to do with energy. So this is just a quick clip. This is me and my former Senator Barbara Boxer when I was in front of the Senate. So she tried to explain to me why I had no business there, and then I tried to explain to her why I did. Let's see if this one works.
Mr. Epstein, are you a scientist?
No, philosopher.
You're a philosopher?
Yes.
Okay. Well, this is the Environment and Public Works Committee. I think it's interesting we have a philosopher here talking about an issue.
It's to teach you how to think more clearly. So that was a very satisfying moment. I didn't have that planned, but her staff laughed at her, which is the ultimate success in that situation. So, but that's really the reason I said that is because that's what I think. So philosophy really helps with clear thinking. I think clear thinking helps with everything. And I really believe that the thing that really got me into this issue was I started learning a little bit about the benefits of fossil fuels, and I really quickly concluded the way we think about fossil fuels makes no sense. So what I want to do, the core of what I want to share today is one way of thinking about fossil fuels and everything else. And the interesting thing is nobody has ever disagreed with this method of thinking, and yet I think almost nobody applies it. And it's very powerful because it's something that's very common sense but not common practice. And it's very helpful in your thinking, but also your communication, because I believe if you can have conversations around this idea, this thinking method, you can be much more successful in conversation. So the method is very simple. So it's same thing you apply when you're thinking about, should I take a prescription drug? You carefully weigh the benefits and the side effects. So we do this with any technology. I'm sure none of you disagree. Nobody has ever disagreed with this. Nobody ever says, no, you should only look at the side effects and not the benefits. You could die, right? Or you should only look at the benefits and not the side effects. You could also die. And you can't exaggerate the benefits or exaggerate the side effects or underestimate the benefits or underestimate the side effects. So I think it's obvious in a sense, but my contention is nobody does it with fossil fuels. Almost nobody does it with fossil fuels. And in particular, I want to focus on the issue of fossil fuels and climate, because climate is by far the number one concern that's causing people to want to get rid of fossil fuels. So climate's not the only side effect of fossil fuels, but it's the major one. So I want to focus on that. And so this idea of carefully weighing benefits and side effects, I'm going to break down into 3 principles. And again, nobody has ever disagreed with any of these principles, and yet almost nobody follows them. So principle 1 is that when we're thinking about what to do about fossil fuels, we have to factor in fossil fuels benefits. So that sounds pretty obvious, right? And yet what I noticed is that so many leading thinkers and institutions are telling us, hey, get rid of fossil fuels, but they're not factoring in fossil fuels benefits. So one crucial area here is agriculture. So fossil fuels are, I once called them in a debate, the food of food, because they're the food for the machines that allow one worker to do the work that used to take 1,000 workers to do. And they're the food for modern fertilizer from natural gas, which allows us to feed 8 billion people, which when we were using bat guano as our major fertilizer, did not scale very well. And we had a lot of problems with that. And yet, it's very common for people to talk about getting rid of fossil fuels and not mention these benefits, even though both the benefit of fossil fuels in terms of diesel-powered machinery and in terms of fertilizer has no near-term replacement. So they're ignoring these unique benefits. And one example I give is a guy named Michael Mann, who's a climate scientist and activist, and he has a whole book about fossil fuels and climate. And as I talk about in chapter 1 of Fossil Future, he doesn't once mention fertilizer or diesel fuel. He only talks about negatives. Now, it's totally okay to talk about negatives insofar as they exist, but he totally ignores the positives. So if you only look at negatives and not positives, you're going to make terrible decisions, and I think that's what the world is doing. Now, the second principle is even more violated. So this is even most, I would say, conservatives or pro-freedom people for years violated this. I think I and a few other people have helped influence it in a different direction. I used to violate it before I figured it out, which is that you have to factor in fossil fuels climate mastery benefits. So we talk about fossil fuels and climate, it's almost always negative. So it's, hey, how much do fossil fuels warm the atmosphere? And then what are the negatives of that? We'll talk in a second. There are also positives of that. But you just think about common sense. What do we use fossil fuels for? One of the main things we use fossil fuels for is to make the climate safer. So you think about heating and air conditioning, which you need a lot here, although fortunately not in the 2 days I've been here. It's been like Southern California, but in general, it's not like that at all from what I've heard. So you need heating and air conditioning to save countless lives, but not just that, you need energy to build sturdy buildings and power storm warning systems and power irrigation systems. This is one of the most crucial issues because it helps alleviate the consequences of drought. The number of people who die from drought, or the rate of drought-related death, has gone down by a factor of 100 in the last 100 years. And fossil fuels are a huge reason why, because they power irrigation systems and they power crop transport from a place with a good harvest to a place that's stricken with drought. And yet this is not talked about. When people talk about fossil fuels, they don't talk about what I call the climate mastery benefits, their ability to help us master the climate by neutralizing the danger of climate. They just talk about negatives. And this is crazy, yet it's common. So the leading organization in the world influencing climate but also energy is called the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC. I recently did an article last week about how their most recent report that's supposedly synthesizing all good climate research doesn't once mention the climate mastery benefits of fossil fuels. Not only that, if you go into the multi-thousand-page reports, they don't even mention it either. They don't mention once that we're safer than ever from drought. So imagine this. This would be like a polio report that didn't mention that we're safer than ever from polio and then didn't mention the role of the polio vaccine and sanitation. Like, it's that egregious, and yet it's totally common. And then the final thing is we need to factor in fossil fuels' negative and positive climate side effects with precision. So when I say negative and positive, it's not just negatives of warming, but also positives of warming, including positives of greening, and we'll see some of those. And then with precision means don't exaggerate or underestimate. And yet it's incredibly common for very influential people to just say things that have no basis in any scientific literature. Like Al Gore's movie that's probably influenced more people than anything in the world on this issue, portrays sea levels is going to rise 20 feet in the next few decades. There's no science that says that at all. Even extreme projections we'll see don't say that at all. So what's really interesting, what I want to stress is there's a very common sense way of thinking about this where you carefully weigh the benefits and side effects, including the overall benefits, the climate mastery benefits, and then you look at the side effects in a very even-handed way, negative and positive, and then precise. And yet almost nobody's doing this. And so my contention is if you actually apply the obvious thinking method of fossil fuels, it's actually obvious we need more. And it's obvious that all these net zero policies would be basically the most destructive thing that's ever happened to the human race. And I mean that literally. Like if you actually did these things. And what's going to happen is we're not going to actually do them. But what's the real risk is that the US and Europe will unilaterally try to pursue these things, or Michigan, within Michigan or where I'm from, California, certain states will unilaterally do this. And it'll accomplish nothing for any goal except to make us less free, less prosperous, and less secure. So I think it's really important to know both the way to think about it and the basic facts. So we don't have a lot of time tonight, but especially because the wind screwed up our presentation. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview. Now, the good news is if you send an email to resources@alexepstein.com or fill out your card, you'll get access to all of this and more. Everything I say here is totally available for free. Everything I do that's content, I do my best to make it available for free. I can't make my book available for free because the publisher would be against that. But if you're a student or educator, you can actually go to fossilfuture.com and get a free copy. So take advantage of that or have your kids take advantage of that. But a lot of the stuff I do is on a website called energytalkingpoints.com, and you'll get access to that and a whole bunch of other stuff. So I'm just getting, what I want you to focus on here is just these are all facts. That's pretty straightforward once you think of them. They're really, I would say, undeniable. That's why I'm going to call them undeniable facts. And yet either we're not taught them or we're taught the opposite, even though they're clearly true. But I think these are the 10 most powerful facts to know, or at least 10 of the most important for your thinking and also for your persuasion. So I'm going to go through them pretty quickly. Now, this is the most actually complicated one, which I spend 90 pages on in Fossil Future, but try to do it in about 90 or 120 seconds. Which is cost-effective energy is essential to human flourishing. So let me define my terms. Cost-effective energy, I include 4 aspects. So affordability, how much a typical person can afford. Reliability, is it available on demand in the amount that we need it? That's very important, particularly for electricity. Versatility, can it power every type of machine? Only 1/5 of the world's energy uses electricity. Most of it is not electricity. It's things like high heat for industry or liquid fuel for transportation. So there's versatility, then scalability. Can it be affordable, reliable, and versatile for billions of people in thousands of places? And so my argument is the more cost-effective energy is, the more we can have what I'm calling human flourishing, which means humans living to their highest potential, particularly living long lives, healthy lives, and opportunity-filled lives. I think those are 3 essentials that everyone can be in favor of. And my basic argument is the more cost-effective energy is, the more we can have a world of flourishing. Because what cost-effective energy does, the more of it we have, the more we can use machines. And machines are really the difference between an abundant and safe world and a deficient and dangerous world. Because the world naturally is not a good place to live. Life was terrible, as you can see from these hockey sticks up here. Like it shows income, resources, population. They were all mostly flat for a long time until we figured out how to use fossil fuels to power machines to be productive and prosperous. And so any area of life you can think of, food, clothing, shelter, transportation, education, it uses energy to power the machines that make us productive and prosperous. And one other important element is that it also uses energy to free up the time. Most of the jobs we have today, including all the medical jobs that save our lives, would not be possible without modern machines because we'd all be spending our time on the farm. So I really do think of it as cost-effective energy is essential to human flourishing. The more of it we have, the more we can flourish. And one element that's really underrated is environmental. People tend to think of energy as negative for our environment, and it's just a question of being less negative. But actually, energy makes our environment much better. Like clean water. So people think of water as, it's nature gives us Evian and Perrier all over the place until the evil fossil fuel industry ruins it. But it's not true, right? Nature is by far the #1 contaminator of water, according to logic and according to the U.S. Geological Survey. But We use we use energy rather to purify naturally dirty water, to pump naturally distant water. So energy makes our environment better. Okay, so we have this thing that's totally crucial to human flourishing, and yet billions of people lack it. So this shows a third of the world is using wood or animal dung as their primary fuel for heating and cooking. So just imagine what that's like, imagine how dirty that is, and imagine how little energy they're using, because all they can afford is just scrounging up the dung and wood around them. And that also has all sorts of deforestation type issues and wildlife type issues. We have 3 billion people using less electricity than a typical American refrigerator. So think about this, like the world is so poor in terms of energy, and yet everyone's focus is how do we get rid of fossil fuels? And this is particularly bad because fossil fuels are in fact a uniquely cost-effective source of energy. So fossil fuels are the only form of energy that checks all 4 boxes: affordable, reliable, versatile, scalable. So they provide 80% of the world's energy, despite a century of aggressive competition, and despite enormous cultural hostility. We still had record fossil fuel use in 2022, despite everyone trying to eliminate it. And it's in particular in the parts of the world that it's growing, and in particular in places that people actually care about cost-effective energy, not like Michigan or California, unfortunately, but China, which has more coal being built that's in the process designed to last 40 or more years than we have in the entire United States. So just think about that. All right, there's a lot to say about why fossil fuels are cost effective. Feel free to ask about that in the question period, but I want to go to the next point, which is very important, particularly for people in Michigan to know, which is that solar and wind are actually failing to replace fossil fuels. There's a narrative, fossil fuels are being rapidly replaced by solar and wind, so no need to worry about these anti-fossil fuel policies. This is false. So solar and wind, it's not this amazing free market phenomenon and transition. Solar and wind are still less than 5% of the world's energy. They're just providing electricity, which itself is just a fifth of the world's energy. And they're only used in significant quantities when they have all sorts of government preferences. So it's not this amazing phenomenon like the car replacing the buggy or something like this. It's actually they have to force their stuff on us because it's not actually good. And you see a very strong correlation between the use of this and price increases and reliability decreases. I think the key reason for it is captured by the Texas blackouts in 2021. And this is what's called the intermittency problem or the unreliability problem. So when you're using solar and wind, when the wind is blowing, the sun is shining, it can look really good if you just take a snapshot. So you just say, hey, the week before the winter storm, solar and wind are providing over half our electricity. So they'll just say, well, let's just double up the solar panels and wind turbines, and then we don't need anything else. But then the winter storm hits, and shockingly, I guess, to the people in Texas and other places, during a winter storm, you don't have a lot of sun. You also don't have a lot of wind. It's not the wind turbines freeze. It's just often you don't have a lot of wind during these storms. And so at one point, the solar panels and wind turbines went to less than 1% of their theoretical capacity. Think about that, which should not be called capacity. It's just fantasy, right? It's just what you hope, not what it actually does. And so if something can go to less than 1%, what percent backup does it need? It needs 100%, right? So you have to pay for the fossil fuel system, for the reliable electricity system, and the unreliable one. So you have these huge infrastructure duplication costs. And then what happens is either you're willing to pay those costs, which is what's happened in Germany, right, which we saw with this, where the prices go way up, or what happens is you try to cut the costs like California has done, like Texas has done, and then you're playing what I call reliability chicken. Right? So you hope that the sun shines enough, the wind blows enough, it doesn't get too hot or too cold, and so you shut down as many reliable power plants as you can and hope for the best, and it doesn't work. So, final fact about the benefits of fossil fuels. And the side effects are pretty quick. Fossil fuels give us an incredible ability to master climate danger. This is so important. People think of it as fossil fuels have taken a safe climate and made it dangerous. They've actually taken a dangerous climate and made it safe. And this is one of my favorite charts in all of for this issue, because what it shows is that it shows that as we've used fossil fuels, we've increased the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. We'll see that correlates to about 1 degree Celsius, 2 degrees Fahrenheit of warming. The rate of death from climate disasters like storms and floods, extreme temperatures, et cetera, has gone down by 98%. So this means the average person is 1/50th as likely to die from a climate-related cause than they used to be. And it's because of things like fossil-fueled heating, air conditioning, building sturdy buildings, drought relief, et cetera, and yet nobody talks about it. And this is so important because if we're really good at neutralizing climate danger using fossil fuels, what that means is it's very hard to imagine a climate problem that would be able to overwhelm us. We've already been able to neutralize most of the incredibly dangerous natural climate. So in order for fossil fuels to cause a huge climate problem, the climate changes don't just need to be 1 degree of warming or 2 degrees of warming. It needs to totally transform the climate in an unprecedented way. And yet we've already been emitting CO2 using fossil fuels for 100 plus years. So it should seem implausible that, oh, well, now it's gotten a lot better, but it's all going to get worse, and the world is going to end. And you see these numbers where they'll say, if it warms 1.5 degrees Celsius, that's the tipping point, or 2 degrees Celsius. But that's not even from now. That's not from now. Those numbers are all from the 1800s. So we've already gotten one. So we've gotten one. Life has gotten amazing. We're safer than ever from climate. But the idea is another half degree or another degree is the apocalypse. This should really make you question the thinking. And so if we look at the side effects from this perspective, and you just look at mainstream climate science, it's not alarming. We do impact climate, but it's not an overwhelming apocalyptic impact. So just to walk you through it quickly, we've had 1 degree of warming over the last 170 years. So that correlates, and significant greening. If you look at how that relates to like the temperature fluctuations in something like New York, it's very, very minor. Now, what they do is they'll create a really small y-axis, so they'll have it on a 0 to 1 scale. So it looks like, oh my gosh, it's so alarming. If you go to NASA's website, it looks like this. But that's like if you made a weight gain thing and it went from 0 to 1/10 of a pound, and you're like, oh my gosh, I gained 1/10 of a pound in 10 years. It's a catastrophe. It's the same kind of thing. Now people think, oh well, we're gonna get we're so close to getting too warm. So like everyone's going to overheat if it gets it all warmer. But the fact is we have far more cold-related deaths than heat-related deaths. So actually warming for the foreseeable future, all things being equal, will save more lives than it takes. And then people think, well, it's going to be ruined at the equator. So it's going to be concentrated in the equator. But this is Biden's climate.gov. This actually is showing, no, warming is supposed to be concentrated in warmer regions during warmer seasons, during warmer times of day. So it'll actually be even more beneficial in cold areas and less harmful in hot areas. And then people think, oh, we're going to reach a tipping point, right? So it's okay, but it's just going to be like this. It's exponential. But actually, every single climate model, including the extreme ones, says that it's actually what's called logarithmic or diminishing. So as you add more CO2, it continues to warm, but it warms more and more slowly. And so the whole idea of the warming, burning up, all this is just, warming to the point of burning up is just nonsense. It's just pseudoscience. And then the only question is, well, will warming cause a whole bunch of other consequences that we can't deal with? And if you look at even the IPCC, which I mentioned earlier, which is extremely biased, even if you look at their actual scientific claims, they say nothing that could actually overwhelm us. So they'll say 3 feet of sea level rise in 100 years. That's not going to overwhelm a world where we already have 100 million people who can live below high tide sea level. They'll say storms are going to become 1 to 10% more intense and then less frequent. That's not going to overwhelm the world. That's not worth ruining the world and depriving it of energy. So I do believe that we impact climate. I just do not believe that it is at all a catastrophic impact, and it certainly doesn't justify the apocalypse of getting rid of fossil fuels and these net zero policies. So my conclusion is simple. Like, this whole rapid elimination of fossil fuels is based on terrible thinking. The world needs more fossil fuels, and the way to achieve it is not by favoring fossil fuels or preferring fossil fuels, but just by having energy freedom. So every form of energy gets to compete. Producers get to choose what to produce, consumers get to decide what to consume, and we have reasonable laws against pollution. I think if we have that kind of world, we'll have a lot more energy, and we'll quickly innovate in terms of alternatives to fossil fuels, particularly nuclear, which I think has a lot of potential, but right now it's criminalized, and I think we need to decriminalize it. So this is like the overall message is we need to carefully weigh the benefits and side effects, and I think if we look at the undeniable facts, it's pretty clear what to do. Just want to point you to a couple resources, and then we'll take questions. Fossilfuture.com, you can get my book, and in particular, students can get it for free. EnergyTalkingPoints.com is where my life's work is all available for free in bite-sized forms. I work with 200 plus political offices, and this is the stuff we give them. And then if you're interested in getting on my list, just send an email to resources@alexepstein.com. If you want to get in touch with me personally, alex@alexepstein.com. And then if you ever have a speaking event and you want me or someone else on our team, you can try speaking at alexepstein.com. So number one lesson is we need to carefully weigh the benefits and the side effects, including overall benefits of fossil fuels, the climate mastery benefits, and then looking at the side effects in an even-handed and precise way. And I think if you think about it this way, you'll want to wear an I Love Fossil Fuels pin, but also if you talk about it in this way, you'll be able to get some others to wear an I Love Fossil Fuels pin. And if you need any, just send me an email. So thank you very much, and I look forward to some questions.
Thank you very much, Alex. And there are some tough questions in here.
Are there really?
Yeah, there is a phrase that facts tell and emotion sells. What advice do you have for those of us who tend to lead with facts and logic, but don't lead with emotion?
My advice is get rid of this expression. It's a big pet peeve of mine. So if somebody tells you, hey, here's a fact, like, I don't want to be cruel here, but like, your daughter's leg just got run over by a car. For those of you who have daughters, is that going to elicit an emotion? It's just a factual statement, right? So facts are not disconnected from emotions. Emotions are related to our evaluation of facts. So I think the main thing is when you're talking about facts, it should be related to people's values. So if I tell a story about, I tell it in Fossil Future, about, say, a woman in a hospital whose baby dies, premature baby dies, who would have totally lived in the United States because they don't have an incubator, because they don't have reliable electricity, like that is factual and emotional. So it's a big subject, but I think you should really, in your own thinking and in communication, you want to be both. So you want to be very value focused. So you need to be very factual there, but also it's emotional. And you should think about energy in an emotional way because it's a life or death issue.
Despite the facts, do you think one of the issues is that the movement against fossil fuels is based on an anti-human worldview?
Yes. I have a whole book arguing this. This is what Fossil Future argues, and I think a hint of it is, and there's a lot of hints of it, but I think that one hint that I point out early in the book and flesh out through the book is notice that the number one goal in the world today is don't change the climate. That's the number one goal. So that's what net zero means. That's what rapidly eliminate fossil fuels. The number one goal in the world today is don't impact the climate. Notice it's not even let's have a livable climate, because if you need a livable climate, that means a lot of energy. There's no focus on a livable climate. It's simply that human beings shouldn't impact the climate. So it's really about, it's not a positive, it's just let's not do this one thing. And I think this really captures that we're taught this view that our impact is evil, which really means at the core we are evil and our impact is evil. And then there's this idea, well, the earth is going to punish us. So it's like its own religion, but it's like the commandment is thou shalt not impact nature, especially climate, and then global warming is really a punishment, right? I mean, it's a hell on earth. And I think it doesn't make any sense scientifically because, as I've said, if you just think common sense, we've made the climate far more livable and the world far more livable, and yet the people don't seem to care about that. So I think that's a clue that the goal of the leadership is not making the world a good place for human beings. It's actually making the world as little impacted and influenced by human beings as possible. But to hate human impact is to hate human beings. If somebody said, hey, I hate bear impact, you'd think they want to kill the bears. But when they say I hate human impact, we think, oh, that's great. Let's parrot all their slogans. And I don't.
Why can't the U.S. emulate the French nuclear power system?
Well, French system is imperfect, and even they are moving away from it. But I take the general point, yeah, nuclear has shown a lot of potential. I mean, look, U.S. has had more nuclear than anyone. We've had some really great plants in this country, and yet it's completely impossible to do because of regulation. This is one thing I'm working on I work with a lot of politicians, is how do we decriminalize nuclear? So I think the thing we need to recognize is we need very radical reform. This is also true in permitting, where you get, like everyone knows, oh, well, we need permitting reform, but I think even most Republicans are not nearly aggressive. In China, they can build a new subway station in 9 hours. Like, can you build a new yoga studio in 9 months? Probably not. So, like, Empire State Building with technology from a century ago was built in just over a year. So we're so far, and the core is, I think, what you guys stand for, which is property rights. Like, what you really need is like the supposedly old-fashioned idea of property rights. That's really the key to all progress, because it allows there to be no gap between human thinking and human action, and that's really what makes progress fast.
How do you get people who have already made up their mind to listen to you?
Well, if it's literally true that they've made up their mind and that they will not change, then you should not focus on them. But I don't think that's most people. So the people I look out for to avoid are people where their entire self-esteem is based on having the opposite view. So Al Gore, for example, I would love to debate him. I've in fact offered him $100,000 to debate. Unfortunately, I can't offer him a meaningful amount of money to him because he's done very well off this issue. He has not accepted, by the way, but like I wouldn't debate Al Gore because I think I could convince him, because if Al, you're going to laugh at what I'm going to say, but this is literally true. If I'm right, the world would be a much better place had Al Gore never been born. That's a hard thing. Okay, I don't know. But that's a hard thing for a human being to swallow. So I'm not going to try to convince him, but I think most people buying into this have just been convinced by others. So I think using some of the techniques I'm talking about can be really effective.
Have you ever been physically attacked by green activists?
Not, this is a weird thing to say, not as much as I've wanted to be. No. I had a like this is the thing. I've done martial arts for a long. I've done jiu-jitsu for 20 years, so I always had a fantasy someone would attack me on a stage. Don't actually do it. I don't actually want it to happen. Certainly, I do not want to be attacked in one of those mobs, right? Because nothing any martial arts is going to do about that. So people have like physically kind of messed with me, but I know enough to know that they're not actually trying to do anything. So fortunately, no. But I do think, unfortunately, like I wouldn't recommend going to those rallies anymore, and I might not myself anymore, because violence has been a lot more normalized now since 2014, which is when those happened. And fortunately, I think now people think, well, if you're really mad, then it's understandable to be violent. And then they also call them peaceful protests. So then it's like, oh, Alex Epstein was peacefully assaulted at a green rally. I don't want that news story.
What about the great extinction of species happening right now?
Well, so I mean, there's a premise embedded in that in terms of what's the extinction. So I cover this a bunch in Chapter 9 of Fossil Future. Insofar as you're having extinction issues, they're definitely not going to be related to small changes in temperature, because different species can deal with a wide range of temperatures, because they don't exist in one temperature. Temperature, as I showed in that chart, fluctuates. So insofar as you have any kind of species issues, you need to address that directly, and then the easiest way to address that directly is to be very wealthy and to be using forms of energy that don't take from the direct land and habitat. So if you don't have fossil fuels and nuclear, yeah, then you're using wood and animal dung, and even with solar and wind, you have to take up a lot of space. So I think it's just another, people are always looking for reasons to attack fossil fuels, and it's often the thing they claim to care about is not what they care about. So again, if you want to have really good wildlife and enjoyment of wildlife, you need a lot of energy and cheap energy that's like from underground, not all this above ground stuff. And it's the same thing, like if you care about people dying from floods, you can't be against the energy that allows them to protect themselves from floods. It's just an excuse. And I think a lot of people, they just have this laundry list of things that is just, they're all rationalizations for attacking fossil fuels.
Has a factual root cause been established for Al Gore's rain bombs?
No, I mean, it's kind of I don't even know what he means by that. But let me just say, I mentioned all these arguments. There's this website, energytalkingpoints.com, but make sure to get on our list, send an email to resources@alexepstein.com, because I believe next week or the week after, we're launching Alex GPT, which if you know ChatGPT, it's me that answers all questions as an AI. It's really good. So that'll be really easy to use, but you need to be on our list.
Is electricity pricing based on peak demand periods a good idea or bad idea?
I mean, I would love ultimately if you had a system where you had truly free market and we were free enough to build, where you could have like competing grids and power lines and stuff. I think that'd be the ultimate way to do it. Insofar as you're not doing that, I think however you're structuring the quote markets, it needs to value reliability, and it cannot have, I think, the cardinal sin of today's electricity quote markets, which is they allow you to sell unreliable electricity for the same price as reliable electricity. So however you're doing it, you need to value reliability. And I think if everyone were required to meet reliability standards that were technology neutral, then if any of these solar schemes are good, then people would just do it as a black box. So they'd combine solar and gas and wind and batteries. And if they can do it, more power to them. But right now, all they have to say is, hey, here's some idiot academic who says it's a good idea. So I get to sell solar electricity, and I have no responsibility for reliability. And one grid planner says it'll work. So and that's what you guys are facing and what we've faced, is just a bunch of totally unaccountable ignoramuses claim they have a brilliant idea for how to run the grid on reliable electricity. It doesn't work, but they don't pay a penalty.
Have any Republicans asked you to speak about fossil fuels in the Energy Committee, that might mean Congressional Energy Committee, how to save our planet, fossil fuels?
I don't understand the end of the question.
So how about the first part? Have any Republicans?
Yeah, no, I understand that part.
Yeah.
So I've spoken a lot. So as I mentioned, I work with 200 plus offices. Unfortunately, the vast majority are one party. You can probably guess which party, although it's called Energy Talking Points, our project. We work with anyone, but unfortunately, mostly Republicans want to reach out to us. So I've spoken behind the scenes to a ton of people, and then I often testify and I'll speak to groups. So I was like Republican Study Committee, and I've testified in front of House Natural Resources. I was recently in front of the Oversight Committee, so I do a lot of that stuff.
Last question. Is it true that there is not enough worldwide cobalt, lithium, et cetera, I assume it means the rare earth metals, to support all of this electric, Green New Deal, et cetera stuff?
It just depends on timetable. So the way I think of it is all of these, what they're trying, it's very important. What they're trying to portray it as is they're trying to portray it as, hey, I've got such an exciting way of powering the world. I can use batteries and EVs and solar and wind, combine them. And my view is, like, okay, if you can do that, more power to you, but then you should be willing to follow technology neutral reliability standards, and you're going to guarantee the reliability of your product. And you're certainly not going to force it on us, but instead they want to force it on us, which is always a giveaway that you do not actually have world's most brilliant idea if you got to force it on anyone. And all their ideas involve three things. So they involve they involve three claims. One is that they can do something cheaply everywhere that has never been done anywhere. Right? Because all these schemes have never been done anywhere, but they claim they can do them cheaply the first time everywhere, which has never happened in the history of industrial civilization. Number two, they claim that they can do it cheaply with an unprecedented scale up of minerals, which is to the question. But it's not that we don't have enough minerals in the earth if you do an MRI of the earth. It's that we don't have anywhere near the production capabilities, and it's very, very hard to rapidly increase your mineral production. So there's a stat that's something like no large mineral industry has doubled in a decade. Like even the US shale, which is like the greatest industrial achievement in history, arguably, that didn't even double in a decade. And yet this involves more than 10 industries doubling in a decade. And they claim this can be done cheaply, when it's the opposite is if you do a crash program, it'll go up. And then the third thing is that they claim it's going to be done cheaply, even though it's never been done. And it's this unprecedented development, even though it's in an anti-development environment that they're part of. So it's the green movement that's against impacting Earth, that's saying, yes, it's going to be really cheap to impact the Earth in an unprecedented way, and we're going to totally let you do it, even though we don't let you do anything. Like, you can't build a yoga studio, but we're going to totally let you dig up the whole Earth to get this stuff. So I just want to stress two things. One is, do not let it pose as a pro-freedom, pro-technology movement. Those are just smoke screens for being a coercive anti-the-technology that works movement. Notice they're also against nuclear and against hydro. So don't do that. And don't take seriously like that they're actually interested in energy. Again, we have a world that needs much more energy. Fossil fuels are uniquely cost effective today. They will remain so for the foreseeable future. Anyone who's enthusiastic about energy needs to really appreciate what fossil fuels do and will continue to do. And if they have a great idea, they should prove it on the free market.
Alex Epstein, thank you.
Thank you very much. And I just want to say, I got to run to a flight, but if you want to contact me, just email me, alex@alexepstein.com.